Mule is the national coordinator of the Elections Observation Group. He is also the regional coordinator of the East and for the East and Horn of Africa Election Observation Network. And of course, he's a leadership consultant specializing on elections and ethics in governance. And since 2007, interestingly, he has been involved in election observation both locally and globally. Thank you for creating time for us.
Thank you.
And of course, we also having Wilfred Muliro. He's a governance strategist. He teaches at the international relations and international security at the Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies at the University of Nairobi. And of course, he has also been pivotal in teaching principles of conflict management and resolutions at the Nazarene University. He is interested in areas such as development, security, and conflict. And I can go on and on about your rich bio, but allow me to end there. Thank you for creating time for us tonight, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so tonight we're talking about a very important topic, if you may ask me, because this is where it all starts. The quality of leadership we get at the end of the day depends on who we elect. And when we're talking about electoral integrity on a basic point of view, let me start with you, Musau. How do you define this for a Kenyan to understand what we mean when we talk about this issue, electoral integrity?
I think the best way to describe electoral integrity is not even to go very deep into the dictionary.
Yes.
It's just to say it's honesty. We want honest leadership. We want people who uphold their moral principles in terms of their leadership qualities and their engagement in the process. And you want people who participate in the process with a very good track record. I mean, put simply, that's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Honesty, moral principles, strong moral principles in terms of your engagement with the public on matters to do with the leadership.
Mm-hmm. Is that what we hold dear? If you look at our political terrain, our campaign trail, the kind of leaders we elect, what they say even on public domain, what they do when elected into office, are we where, Mule is describing?
I would say that whenever you talk of electoral integrity, is like an oxymoron. It's like you're saying loud silence. Putting two words in a sentence that there is a clash. Today I saw a petition, I think it's like a public statement by youths to the EACC, and one of the statements was that they have looked at the lineup and it's like who is who in terms of criminals, corrupt, and all those people. It was very interesting, but I would say that from where he has started, it's also, it's like I'm looking at it in terms of, it's like a game. People sit together and we agree and we say, we will be fair in this manner. And we expect that when you go in that game, you will be a good player, the referee will also be very good, and we'll follow the rules we have agreed. But we don't know what normally happens, especially in what I would call maybe young states, the 50 years and below. We call them developing states. Maybe we're also developing in terms of democracy and electoral processes, that we find even the rules we have put there and the institutions also themselves, we don't listen to them. As we were just discussing, you'll find that even where the government, which should be the watchdog of those, the fair game in the electoral processes, you'll find that they're the ones who break the rules. So I would say in short that we are still not at the peak of talking about integrity in elections, in not just in Kenya, but most of these young states across the board, whether it is even in Latin America or Africa. Yes.
That's a very unfortunate space to be in as a country, because the ideal is that we should be there. For us to have, quality leadership, we should be where, Musau is describing, but we are not there from what Muliro is telling me. So I'll come to you, Mr. Mahandia. I'll borrow from your legal mind a little bit. Just talk to me about how we have protected and safeguarded, the principles of integrity when it comes to leadership. He has cited institutions and, of course, pieces of law that should be able to help us do this. Let's talk about those. What do we have?
Thank you very much, Safin. When you started, you mentioned about Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and for those who might not be aware, that's an entire chapter in the Constitution dedicated to ethics and morals and values of leadership and integrity. So one of the key, what strikes most about Chapter 6, it is a very unique aspect found in, I think Kenya is one of the very rare instances where we have an entire chapter dedicated to something that does not define structures of government, but defines how we relate, how public officers and state officers relate with government. And if the reason why that is so, if you want to find that out, you have to go back to our constitutional making journey and look at some of the constitutional documents that led to this constitution and the submissions that the public made during the process. And one thing that came out clearly was that Kenyans then were so frustrated and so unhappy with the way public state officers and our leaders were behaving because of corruption, abuse of office, violation of human rights. And Kenyans were so aggrieved and saddened by that state that the committee of experts decided to dedicate an entire chapter just to define ethical and moral standards.
It was that serious.
It was that serious. So in the 2010 constitution that we have, that was there, and even beyond that, beyond Chapter 6, there are so many other provisions in the constitution just that talk about that ethical and moral issues. And then we also passed several acts of parliament that reflected the desire of the Constitution. We have the Leadership and Integrity Act, we have the Public Officer and Ethics Act, we have the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, and we have several provisions in other acts which talk about ethics and morals. So the key feature of it is that we have more or less legalized ethical and moral values in our laws. Yeah.
Is that the way to go though, Mr. from where you, I mean, we have to make it legal. We have to introduce some sort of punitive measures for people to observe. When it comes to, matters like ethics, like integrity, I mean, going legal, is that the best strategy?
Derek has not even mentioned the codes of conduct, which is part of the entire infrastructure of trying to regulate. But there's a friend of mine who keeps saying, has this very interesting phrase: we can never ever regulate good manners. No, you can't sit down and say, I'm going to... it's a very, of course, there's a serious concern from why Derek has left on the issue of the weight that Kenyans decided to put on the question of trying to regulate behavior, political behavior in this country, so that we even had to have an entire chapter just speaking about this is a big statement by itself, that Kenyans really wanted something done as far as the political bad manners that we have in our country, but is that the way to go? I don't think that's the way to go. And one of the very clear reasons that is not the way to go is even how we are going about it as we speak right now. Despite the fact that we have a legal framework which is very firm, are people behaving well in terms of our politics?
That was my next.
Are we conducting our elections with some level of decorum? Is there any decorum in the way we are going about? We have now even established another institution called the National Cohesion and Integration Commission to just regulate, to just police. Basically police. We're still not talking about the regular forces that we have in terms of we have a police unit which deals with some of those civil and criminal issues. But now we even have an agency which you have set up to regulate, to police again the kind of behavior that we have out there. It's clearly not paying dividends. moving that direction. And therefore, we must start asking ourselves as Kenyans whether that was even necessary. We have even talked about Chapter 10 of Article 10, of the Constitution, which also prescribes a number of values that we are supposed to subscribe by. While it's okay to be able to have an idea of how we want to regulate ourselves, the kind of legal framework that we need to have so that we can be able to have a kind of a due process, a structure in terms of how we conduct our electoral affairs. I think what the biggest issue, and I think Mwalimu had started talking about it when he talked about that there's an oxymoron in terms of can you have integrity in elections, and then it brought the issue of the fact that we are still a young nation, so that there is a certain there's a certain level of understanding that we need to get to as a country to process these cultures, process these new modern ideas about how we conduct our public affairs, so that once we are in sync with them, then we are able to understand. I always, one of the core issues that I always cite is that I don't think we are in a state, in a country, where we are yet to understand the modern nation state in such a way that we can be able to be compliant with the workings of a nation, or a new nation, of a new or modern nation state. Most of the things that we will be discussing in rallies and in political campaigns is about oathing, is about traditional. Ethnicity is based on the traditional mindset, not in terms of the kind of economic mindset we're supposed to be thinking about right now. So we are locked in the past in terms of how we used to do our things, but we have a modern statecraft system that we needed to adopt, we needed to adapt to, but we've never adapted. And the best manifest of this is when we are conducting our electoral activities and political activities.
You're playing catch up.
Basically, with the system. So the systems, the institutions, and other things that are out there, but we are yet to catch up.
Muliro, I mean, we have these provisions in law. In as much as that is not the best strategy, we have them. We have institutions that are supposed to be following up to ensure that we are there, like when it comes to matters integrity. I mean, what loopholes are there to allow that are exploited to allow these political bad manners to continue close to 12 years down the line? For instance, when it comes to the 2010 Constitution, 12 years down the line, implementation of Chapter 6 of the Constitution is still proving to be a hard nut to crack. What is it that is the problem? What are we not doing right? Who is not doing what?
I think he's captured one thing. You know, we have beautiful. We have it's a leap. We jump to somewhere and we have all those designs, exactly what he has described, what you can find in a first-class developed country, the rules and everything. But we, the people ourselves, our culture, our mosaic, our system of understanding who is a leader, is it in that format? So this one will bring me to where the loopholes lie. Is that one of them is the people that we have, I was listening to him and I was saying, who will let the villager at home there in my place know that a leader must have this and this and this and this, and the law says this and it has this, so that when they go to vote, they are informed. They don't know that. I even saw political parties, you're saying that, very beautiful codes of conduct. Almost every political party, and people are signing before they go for nominations. But the games that are played, Safim, is that the same people, just going back to what the youths wrote today, the same people you are saying should be riding these institutions, should be in charge of implementations and everything, are exploiting those loopholes to remain at the top. So if you refine politics, you will not be there. Most of these people will not be there if we refine the current politics and follow exactly what he has mentioned. But once they are there, you see the circus in parliament, the games around even 2/3 gender rule. Actually, there are loopholes. I am aware, I know, of political parties that did something very, and I said now I think you are right, to police human beings with legal rules. You know, even in football you have the referee, but you'll find people decided that political parties, you know, saw loopholes in these laws and everything. And what they were doing is that when Chepkati returned the list and said that you have not fulfilled the agenda. So what you do, if you're not very, maybe you are, I will not mention a part, maybe you are very strong in Northeastern and you're not strong in Kisumu. So look for names of women in Kisumu and they fill up. But you know very well during the elections, even you not even, they will be there. So I'm even thinking very hard, please, the monitors, you'll be there for a long time, my senior brother. We may even, at the end of the day, you have fulfilled what IBC has said. But after the elections, the people have decided. You'll find maybe 99% are men. So I see two things. One, there are those who benefit from the loopholes, and therefore, once we put them at the leadership, their work is to make sure that it doesn't work. Because if you refine politics, most of these current leaders, sadly, will not be there. And then number two is the case of, do we really, as people, know all these things when we are electing our leaders? So that's why I was saying, when you say integrity and elections, it's like two words are clashing, because we see elections as an event. Nowadays, even it's worse. It's an event, you don't care about the person you're electing, whether there is anything about integrity. I think I like it where somebody says that we vote the way we do, mostly in Africa, because electoral democracy does not affect our life. I vote in my friend here, he comes in, I do not know that he needs to convince me that he's going to do something about his manifesto. He comes in, he enriches himself and his family, he looks great, so he doesn't affect you. Sewage is still there. So next time you go to vote, you look for a way of capitalizing on that short period. It doesn't affect your life. So those are some of the loopholes that I think are playing against this struggle to have hygiene in politics.
And let me just add a quick thing on a discussion that we've been having with a number of other experts over what seems to be the problem, and how do we get ourselves into out of this particular mess, but what exactly informs it. So even before we go way forward, but what informs it. So we looked at two variables. One, the question of the institutions, and by institution we also mean the laws and the other things, including, of course, the actual agencies which are working on how prepared they are and how effective they are in terms of doing their stuff, as it interacts with the other side, which is called the political behavior. So how we behaving and how the institutions are prepared and effective, that interactivity between those two variables is what informs how we are doing our things. So we may have a very able IEBC on one side, doing very good job. But if the politicians, like yours, Mwalimu is saying, if they decide to change goalposts every now and then because things are not working out for them, they will still behave badly. So will the people feel the election went well, despite the fact that maybe IBC did a very good job, or the political parties agency did a very good job, or even one political party did a very good job? They will still feel something has gone wrong. So there is a way we have to harmonize all that and ask ourselves, how do we correct behavior, political hygiene as is called it, and then how do we continually improve? Because we'll never be at a place where, even in the US, I mean, institutions and processes are still not perfect. But how do we continually improve?
So that it's a progressive journey,
activity,
and
yes.
You get better every electioneering period.
Exactly.
Let me just also ask you, Derek, concerning a case that, an interesting one that has really, also resonated with what many are concerned about, that Transparency International and the other civil society groups went to court to to sort of seek or petition that politicians with questionable integrity backgrounds should be barred from vying for any political seat. There must have been a justification why you found this important. And was there any green light? Because what we've had is IEBC says their hands are tied. At the end of the day, in as much as we are not in a position to actually bar this person from vying. So are we helpless? Talk to me about why this case was crucial.
So jurisprudence evolves over time. From the first cases we had after the new constitution on Chapter 6, we saw a very different interpretation of the court. And that was the infamous case of the ICC suspects, the current president and deputy president. And they were allowed to contest in court. But over time, we have seen a change in how courts are handling issues of Chapter 6. Of course, there are some inconsistencies. There's sometimes the judgments go north, sometimes they go south. But there seems to be a radical shift in how courts are considering handling Chapter 6 cases. But what really, one of the things that really prompted us to go to court is, one, we are at variance. We disagree with how the main institutions involved in Chapter 6 have been handling elections issues. So first of all, the Constitution, of course, establishes the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and it says that is the specialized institution that is in charge of the custodian of Chapter 6. It is in charge of making sure the implementation of Chapter 6 is successful. But if you look at the electoral process, especially with regard to vetting and clearing of candidates, then that role seems to be handled by IEBC. So what happens is, for any candidate, if you desire to hold office, you fill a self-declaration form, submit to ESCC, and that data is taken to IEBC. So ultimately, IEBC is the institution which determines whether or not you are cleared for the ballot. So one of the orders we are seeking in our petition is a declaration that ESCC is the main and final custodian of Chapter 6, and it should be clearing, not recommending. The same way, if you require clearance on taxation issues, you go to KRA, and you come out either with a certificate or not. So that the role of IEBC is just to confirm whether or not you have it and whether or not it's valid.
So ESCC, according to from where you said, should be the clearing body. It should be the one giving you the clearance to vote.
So if you don't have it, you fight your wars with ESCC, and after you're done, you come to IEBC. That is number one. Number two, we also disagree with the standard of clearing of Chapter 6 for election candidates. The standard that seems to be applied today, nowadays, is innocent until proven guilty. So that sets a criminal threshold to ethical issues, which we are pleading in our petition that those are two very different things. There are criminal issues aside, the ethical issues aside. So we are telling the courts we should have a standard for ethics and morality, because they are in the Constitution, and that standard should neither be criminal nor civil, because there are certain ethical values in the Constitution that you can violate without necessarily being criminally liable. A good example is the patriotism, showing respect to office, dignity, gross misconduct. There are certain things that you can do that fall within those categories, but we might not find any criminal charge to put on you. So if you violate them, you will not have no criminal record, but you will still have violated the Constitution. So we are telling the court that there is something the Constitution is telling us, and if we listen very carefully, then we should have an extra standard, so that issues that are criminal in nature, that is, of course, we know there is the DCI and DPP, but what really does EACC do? So those are the two main things we are arguing in court.
All right. Wait to see how that will go. But it's a concern for many, barring those who have questionable integrity backgrounds from vying. From where you sit, probably, Musau, why is this important, that a person who has a questionable level of integrity should not even be allowed to hold public office? As you have observed the quality of leadership we've had in our country, and even those who have served in public office, why should we see that as an important component among the qualifications of the leader that we elect come August the 9th?
Simple. Public offices are held in trust. And underline that word over and over. We do not give you a public position for yourself. We give you a public position so that you can serve us. Kenya is a representative democracy. We cannot all go to Bunge. We cannot all go to the county assemblies. We cannot all be presidents. So we appoint individuals, or we elect individuals to go and serve on our behalf. And therefore, for you to be able to hold that position, you need to be an honorable person. We need honor in that person, because you're representing very many interests. You're representing Kenyans, you're representing professors, you're representing young people, women, PWDs, everybody across the country. So they're looking at you to be the one who represents their interests in the interest houses. The interest houses are parliament and the other assemblies across. So we have to have an honorable person. And in fact, the word Mheshimiwa emerges from that. The idea that the person who goes out there must be an honorable person emerges from that trust that is given to these individuals. So we cannot afford to have somebody who has, and Derek has described it very well, so that forget about the criminal issues. We know this one can be handled. I mean, you will actually be barred from participating in public engagement if you have a criminal record. But it is the ethical issues which give confidence to us to be able to elect you, because you're saying Mwalimu is of high moral standing. We think if he comes and listens to these old women in the village and gets to know what they need, then he can actually be able to go and represent that. But if you have somebody who we see from processes, even from experience, some of the people who are running for offices right now, and the young people that Mwalimu was talking about are very right. If you look at the landscape of candidature in this coming election, then you're seeing all these people, we have heard them, Mumbi Ngugi Justice, even at one time had to be, and that's one of the radical things that Derek is talking about, at one time had to bar governors from going back to their offices while their cases were going on. Because it is believed, of course, in public knowledge that they'll interfere with the processes. Some of them have been implicated in some of them have been impeached. What is an impeachment process? Doesn't it take a kind of qualification? For us to say Mwalimu has been impeached, haven't a number of people.
It's a process.
Yes, it's a process. Now, when that comes out at the end and is labeled on me, Mule has been impeached for one reason or the other, is in that something which already labels you.
But so, I mean, how do we treat this elephant in the room? Innocent until proven guilty. It's a right for you, No, and then there's also that other right of you to, the right of a person to vie, and contest for any political office. How do we strike a balance between these two rights?
No, the issue is, actually, Derek was trying to explain that very well in terms of the appeal that Transparency International and others are trying to make to the judicial system. So that let us not, we cannot make, how do I put this? The question of the threshold, the evidential threshold that is required to qualify an ethical leader should not be at the level of criminal criminal levels. So that the criminal justice system can deal with those criminal, and we are very clear on that. But there are ethical issues, ethical considerations for leadership, and that's the reason why we have an entire chapter in the Constitution.
Dedicated
so they need to they need to clarify. So actually, the appeal here is that the judiciary needs to clarify that threshold that is required for people to be able to hold Safin in trust for public office.
I hope you can trust me. But let's hope that thought. We'll come back and I'll be telling you somebody else who wants the judiciary to interpret the law further. That is the IEBC. And I'll be telling you why, and we'll be dissecting that in just a bit. But allow me to just take a very short break. We're coming back with much more. This is Kenya Decides, coming to you live from Fairmont, the Norfolk Hotel. Do stay with us. We're coming back with much more.
Boresha maisha na bima. Maisha hayatabiriki, huenda kukawa na panda shuka. Iwapo utashindwa kulipia bima yako malipo ya kila mwezi, usiwe na wasiwasi. Pata bima ili kuhakikisha yote yatakuwa sawa.
Mimi stories za nusu sizipendi.
Najua.
Nani alioita hapa?
Haya ndio mambo ya kipuzi ambayo alikuwa.
That's a dodgy answer. I think you're lying.
I'm not lying. Nakwambia kweli mo.
Kwanza, achana na msichana.
Kwa hivyo inamaanisha ulipoletwa nyumbani ndio ilikuwa mara ya kwanza wewe kumwona Lea.
Let us enjoy the football.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us as we continue with our program tonight as we talk about electoral integrity, looking at what we have done right, where we are going wrong, and how to bridge the gap as we edge closer to the August polls so that we can be able to elect leaders who are going to serve our interests as Kenyans. And tonight I'm hosting a panel of 3 gentlemen, and we have been discussing this topic quite a bit. And I just want to pick up from where we left before we went on break, and I'll begin with you, Muliro. You know, earlier we were talking about these legal complexities and where there are loopholes even in law. And one thing that I'd like to bring up right now concerns what IEBC said just recently concerning, you know, saying that its hands are tied and they want the court to interpret the law, because as the law stands, for as long as one can appeal a conviction, he or she will get clearance certificate to vie for any political seat. This is in the event that a person who has been taken to court has been convicted. We know that there is that provision of it's your right to appeal at a higher court. So somebody has been convicted at the magistrate court, they go to a higher court, they go to the Court of Appeal, they go to the Supreme Court, and they do that. And sometimes at the end of the day, they carry the day. So, I mean, Is the judiciary, just to ask it plainly, sometimes a weaker link when it comes to addressing some of these issues?
I think that song may not hold water, but the judiciary is a weak link. Heard about that. But what, I'm not a lawyer, but what he was saying was it captures what IBC is organizing over, is that sometimes we place a lot of burden or responsibilities on institutions when, if we stepped back and looked at them, they say, we'll find that we don't need to place that burden on IBC. You know, we're almost moving to a level that we want IBC to be the judiciary, a level that IBC wants to be DCI or EACC. So I agree with what they were saying. If we can disintegrate and say that EACC can do this, then inform IBC this one does not qualify, then it can work. So I think for them, the same thing. And why I would not blame the courts is that somehow, in my view, in the current state of politics in Kenya, the only vanguard that we have that is for the people now, in my view, is the judiciary. In my view. Because parliament has been weakened, this parliament that we've had here, we cannot trust them to move the wheels of refining politics. As usual, executive will never be, because it's like a prefect with a stick in hand. But somehow I feel we may be very harsh on the judiciary, but if you flip it on the other side and ask them that if they can hold other issues with very low threshold, again, flippancy, then they'll be crossing into the basic human rights of people. So just the same way.
So
people can misuse the judiciary and say, stop my opponent so that I can win, and later you find that maybe it was not the case. So that's why they say you still enjoy. It's not that politics is now the major expedient aspect of life, so that we can suspend the rest and say, for the purposes of politics, my brother Msao, we must stop you at a very low level. You cannot run because we suspect that you are corrupt. So I think it just goes the same way it's done with the rest of society. And now you find that the players themselves, I don't know whether there is connivance with judiciary, but somehow we have hope that it is the arm that is remaining on the side of the people. What you have mentioned is the most common thing. And that is why you should ask ourselves that how come in this election at this time, when Kenyans have become very, informed and institutions are almost working, almost all people who have cases, suspects, are running for elective positions. People who hold very high offices that we thought are even better than being an MP, are actually exiting to be governors and MPs. That's the question I've been agonizing with. Maybe we need a research around that. And the idea is that once you get the kingdom, as Kwame Nkrumah used to say, you'll secure the rest, secure the political kingdom, and you'll be given the rest. You will be controlling all these institutions and your cases will never be concluded.
There's also one interesting thing that as you agonizing over those questions, which are very critical, I'm also asking myself, and we've seen this in the trends of how we vote. People who've even been implicated in major cases such as corruption and major cases that touch on integrity, they end up winning an election. And it's sort of like in this country, being implicated in a scandal is actually a bonus to winning. Why? I mean, what does that even tell about our own understanding of the culture of voting and understanding of what leadership means? Why does this happen?
Political bad manners pays.
Like it sells. I mean, today you're implicated in a corruption case, tomorrow you are,
You see, when you have a system, when you have a country where the political, and to use Mwalimu as again it was in terms of seeking the political kingdom. So the political kingdoms is all protective. If it becomes all protective and it delivers, then there is desire by everybody to get into it. And then remember, what is the bad manners all about? We are talking about impunity, we're talking about corruption, we're talking about all those other things. What does corruption beget you? Wealth. Now, if you have a system, and then on the converse of it is that we have wananchi, all of us, who are very, innocently trooping to an election so they can be able to choose the best leader possible. But these people have the wherewithal to be able to mobilize us, to be able to release us. You know what releasing us means? Releasing us of voter bribery, giving people handouts, and therefore be able to buy their way right into the office, knowing, the incentive. You ask yourself, what are these incentives? And Mwalimu was very trying to ask that question. What are these incentives where we say we are having a member of parliament who is using about 30 million shillings to be able to get into office? How much does a member of parliament get in a month? Let's assume it's about 1 million shillings. So in a year, it's around what, 12 million. So in 5 years, how much money are you getting? And we still not talked about
60 million.
Yeah, 60 million. But somebody has used an entire 30 million. They're saying they are going back there just so they can be able to get back their money and then be able to get another million. Is that the reason why they go? Some of the expenses even go beyond that. They go even beyond the amount of money that they're going to be able to use over that period. Because when we are talking about the money they're using, but we're also talking about the money they keep giving out even during when they're in office, because they still continue giving handouts. So what is the motivation to go to that political office where we have not seen a lot of good delivery in terms of good leadership in this country? So exactly what is the motivation? So we are building an edifice which is basically based on bad leadership, a very corrupt regime, and something which works only for a very few people. And those very few people are the ones, therefore, who run for this thing, which also informs the kind of politics that we have, dead zero-sum game politics, where the winner wins everything and the loser loses everything. And that's why people are willing to even kill each other to get themselves into the office. So we need to redeem ourselves of this kind of edifice by reworking the entire process. If the institutions need to work, I agree with Mwalimu that the judiciary is one of the emerging pillars that people can be able to hold on to. But what we need in an election process is predictability. And Derek has mentioned it as saying sometimes they're blowing hot and cold. You want consistency. In election parlance, we usually say electoral processes should be predictable. Only the results should be unpredictable. But in Kenya it's in the inverse. We nearly know the election results, but we don't know the processes. They are not clear. So even when it comes to judiciary and the kind of rulings that we want to see from that coming from they need to be consistent. We need to see the same script over and over and over so that people know what to expect when they do certain things.
Aside from the judiciary, let's talk about the role of political parties, and I'll ask this question. It's on Twitter from one Stanley Wabomba. He asks, has the amendment of the Political Parties Act enhanced integrity in the electoral process ahead of the August polls? Derek?
Well,
interesting.
Legally, it should have, because there's a provision, I think, section 38H, that requires political parties to also vet candidates and ensure that they meet all the constitutional standards, including ethical and moral standards. So ideally, it should, but
ideally.
Underline ideally.
Yeah. And the big question has always been, how do you do that vetting? What tool do you use? What is the standard? And who is involved in that chain? So what we witnessed with the political parties during these nominations is that there seemed to be absolutely no form of vetting or clearing on ethical and moral standards. So I think it was everyone just came into the party, and some of them were cleared, some of them got so they were allowed to participate in the nominations. So political parties are the first gatekeepers in ethical
So they have a role,
issues.
they
have a very important role, but we've actually seen some party blocking out aspirants or prospecting aspirants from contesting for office. We saw it with the Jubilee Party in Nakuru, and the NYS Girita. She was blocked, and during the last election, I think also either Jubilee and ODM also blocked some candidates because of ethical issues, but they handle it very softly. I don't think there's any significant improvement, but it's something they're actually legally required to do, but they don't. Yeah.
But just to add, in terms of we had this when we all observed, and all Kenyans observed the political party processes. So we have a new phenomenon which has come into town. The idea of direct nominations, consensus building, negotiated democracy, and all those things. Now, what Derek is pointing is actually could be a good thing if used well by the leadership of the political parties. Let's give it to them. The political parties really don't have the resources to be able to really conduct a totally clean elections. IBC requires over 40 billion shillings to even conduct national elections. Which political party has the muscle to be able to do something even close to that, even a percentage of that? I don't think they have that. But the idea of saying, let us sit and debate who comes on board, who we give tickets to, it gives opportunity to the leadership of the political parties, as Derek is saying, to be able to actually vet. And the law provides that they can be able to provide a system. They all submitted nomination rules to the commission, the IBC, and to the ORPP. Within those nomination rules is how you want to vet your candidates, how you want to, there are codes of conduct which needs to be adhered to. So we would have hoped that they would use the fact that they within that boardroom, they can be able to say Mule does not look a very qualified candidate because he has been mentioned in this case and the other case and the other case. Therefore, let's save the people from this embarrassment by picking the right candidates. That is what we expected. Of course, the big issue for me, and this is what I wanted to add, is again predictability. How consistent is this? Are we seeing? Did we see places where somebody we thought would have been vetted out went through, and the same party at another instance actually does a good thing? So these inconsistencies and lack of predictability, people don't know what to think.
So it is applied.
Yes, selective
application of that particular.
It's even the issue of money.
Exactly.
Parties do not have resources. And these people with questionable characters and resources, when they arrive to a party, I've seen that, very genuine members who have gone through elections come, and the way they are treated is different from this known corrupt person. Every party wants that person because they'll bring money.
Of course.
So still there is that weakness from the gatekeepers, as you say, the first people. Although I think some parties, so ANC, some parties they are trying, as he says.
No, they make
there is discussion, progress. There is consensus, there is direct nomination, there's ballot paper, then there is indirect consensus and negotiations on the candidates.
We've run out of time for this conversation, but as your final remarks, in the event that all that fails, the buck stops with the voter.
Exactly.
Yeah. As part of your final remarks, what do you think Kenyans should do in terms of safeguarding the integrity of the process of elections in this country? I'll start with you, Derek, and then just finalizing.
Okay. I think when we talk about corruption generally, the biggest conversation has always been about ethos. That belief in something, that inherent belief in something which is not guided by law. And Kenya has always been, there's always been stated that Kenya lacks a national ethos, so that we are very apathetic towards corruption. If we are able to fix our national ethos so that we can view corruption with the content it deserves, then the leaders we elect into office have to be tied somewhat with the issues of corruption, so that at the ballot box, and when we started, you talked about electoral integrity. So that's where it all starts, at the ballot box. I think leaders voters just need to make the right decisions, because something happens during politics. There's a euphoria that just clouds the voter's mind, so that any other time outside politics and campaigns, when you have a conversation with the average Kenyan, they are very optimistic and have a clear understanding of the people they want to associate with, and the kind of profile that they want their leaders to have. But when it comes to campaigns, somehow it just flies. So I think we really need to educate Kenyans and let them know that
awareness,
back stops with them.
All right. Mule?
Personally, elections is a process, a long process, it's a progressive process. From 63 up to now, we have seen a voter register which has been expanding. We have seen a younger and younger voters coming through. My hope is that younger voters being much more educated, being much more aware of the new environment that we're dealing with. Therefore, they're going to be able to interrogate the process much more. My only prayer is that all the institutions which work in concert to manage elections work with the people, work to educate the people, to inform the people, so that the citizen agency can become the last bastion of defending our democracy.
Yeah.
That would I would say.
Thank you so much. Muliro?
Oh, I would say this, that Kenyans must know that the way we vote, elections affect their life. It comes, their lives, it comes only once after 4 or 5 years. And therefore, apart from the institutions, the laws, they have this system power, at least once after 4 years, to make the right decision on who will be the shepherd of their sheep, as you say. You know, the reason why we must have a person of integrity as our representative, because it is not a monarch, it is a representative democracy. We can all be presidents, by the way. All Kenyans, maybe 95%, are capable of being presidents. But the person we are allowing to represent our issues, we must be very careful about that person. Whatever they have done in society, we live with them. The law allows that the person who comes to lead us is part of us, is one of us. We know them. We should never say that the history that we know about them will change when we give them leadership. It will be worse. Therefore, this is the only time that the integrity of the leaders will have must come from the people, apart from the laws that are there and the institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wilfred Muliro, a governance strategist, been also having a sit down with the Mule Musau, the National Coordinator of the Elections Observation Group, ELOG. Derek Mahandia, also a Senior Regional Officer at the Transparency International Kenya Advocacy and Legal Advice Center in Nairobi. Thank you, gentlemen, for creating time for us tonight. And there you have it, electoral integrity. We may fail, we may be dodgy in implementing the law, and agencies also who are custodians of this may also be facing challenges in delivering on their mandate. But remember, you carry the power, the ultimate power to decide which type of leader you're going to elect when it comes to the August poll. Do you know them? Do you trust them? Do you trust that they will deliver on your interest as Mwananchi? Be asking yourself as you make that very crucial decision as the clock continues to tick. My name is Safina Ching Oma. Our sign language interpreter tonight has been Susan Thuku. We are signing out from Fairmont, the Norfolk Hotel right here in Nairobi. Have a good night and God bless.
Mimi stori za nusu nusu sizipendi.
Najua.
Nani aliyoita hapa?
Haya ndio mambo ya kipuzi ambayo alikuwa.
That's a dodgy answer. I think you're lying.
I'm not lying. Nakwambia ukweli mo.
Kwanza, achana na msichana.
Kwa hivyo inamaanisha ulipoletwa nyumbani ndio ilikuwa mara ya kwanza wewe kumwona Lea.
Let us enjoy the football.
This is CGTN, China